Robinson Crusoe, Chapter 24, Part 2. After this, however, it cost us near a fortnight's time to get her along, as it were, inch by inch, upon great rollers into the water. But when she was in, she would have carried 20 men with great ease. When she was in the water, and though she was so big, it amazed me to see with what dexterity and how swift my man Friday would manage her, turn her, and paddle her along. So I asked him if he would, and if we might venture over in her. Yes, he said, he venture over in her very well, though great blow wind. However, I had a farther design that he knew nothing of, and that was to make a mast and sail, and to fit her with an anchor and cable. As to mast, that was easy enough to get, so I pitched upon a straight young cedar tree, which I found near the place, and which there was a great plenty of in the island. And I set Friday to work to cut it down, and gave him directions how to shape it and order it. But as to the sail, that was my particular care. I knew I had old sails, or rather pieces of old sails enough, but as I had had them now 20 years by me, and had not been very careful to preserve them, nor imagining that I should ever have this kind of use for them, I did not doubt but they were all rotten, and indeed most of them were so. However, I found two pieces which appeared pretty good, and with these I went to work, and with a great deal of pains and awkward, tedious stitching, you may be sure, for want of needles, I at length made a three-cornered ugly thing, like what we call in England a shoulder of mutton sail, to go with a boom at the bottom, and a little short sprit at the top, such as usually our ship's longboats sail with, and such as I best knew how to manage, because it was such a one as I had to the boat in which I made my escape from Barbary, as related in the first part of my story. I was near 2 months performing this last work, viz., rigging and fitting my mast and sails, for I finished them very complete, making a small stay and a sail or foresail to it, to assist, if we should turn in windward, and which was more than all, I fixed a rudder to the stern of her to steer with. And though I was but a bungling shipwright yet, as I knew the usefulness and even necessity of such a thing, I applied myself with much pains to do it, and at last I brought it to pass. Though, considering the many dull contrivances I had for it, that failed, I think it cost me almost as much labor as making the boat. After all this was done, too, I had my man Friday to teach as to what belonged to the navigation of my boat. For though he knew very well how to paddle a canoe, he knew nothing what belonged to a sail and a rudder, and was the most amazed when he saw me work the boat to and again in the sea by the rudder, and how the sail jibbed and filled this way or that way as the course we sailed changed. I say, when he saw this, he stood like one astonished and amazed. However, with a little use, I made all of these things familiar to him, and he became an expert sailor, except that as to the compass, I could make him understand very little of that. On the other hand, as there was very little cloudy weather and seldom or never any fog in these parts, there was less occasion for a compass, seeing the stars were always to be seen by night and the shore by day, except in the rainy seasons, and then nobody cared to stir abroad, either by land or sea. I was now entered on the 27th year of my captivity in this place, though the last 3 years that I had this creature with me ought rather to be left out of the account, my habitation being quite of another kind than all the rest of the time. I kept the anniversary of my landing here with the same thankfulness to God for his mercies as at first. And if I had such cause of acknowledgment at first, I had much more so now, having such additional testimonies of the care of Providence over me, and the great hopes I had of being effectually and speedily delivered. For I had an invincible impression upon my thoughts that my deliverance was at hand, and that I should not be another year in this place. However, I went on with my husbandry, digging, planting, fencing as usual. I gathered and cured my grapes and did every necessary thing as before. The rainy season was, in the meantime, upon me, when I kept more within doors than at other times. So I had stowed our new vessel as secure as we could, bringing her up into the creek, where, as I said in the beginning, I landed my raft from the ship, and hauling her up to the shore at high water mark, I made my man Friday dig a little dock, just big enough to hold her, and just deep enough to give her water enough to float in. And then, when the tide was out, we made a strong dam across the end of it to keep the water out, and so she lay dry, as to the tide from the sea. And to keep the rain off, we laid a great many boughs of trees, so thick that she was as well thatched as a house. And thus we waited for the month of November and December, in which I designed to make my adventure. When the settled season began to come in, as the thought of my design returned with the fair weather, I was preparing daily for the voyage. And the first thing I did was to lay by a certain quantity of provisions, being the stores for our voyage, and intended in a week or fortnight's time to open the dock and launch out our boat. I was busy one morning upon something of this kind when I called to Friday and bid him to go to the seashore to see if he could find a turtle or tortoise, a thing which we generally got once a week for the sake of the eggs as well as the flesh. Friday had not been gone long when he came running back and flew over our outer wall or fence like one that felt not the ground or the steps he set his feet on. And before I had time to speak to him, he cries out to me, "Oh, master, oh, sorrow, oh, bad." "What's the matter, Friday?" says I. "Oh, yonder, there," says he. "One, two, three, canoe. 1, 2, 3." By his way of speaking, I concluded there were 6, but on inquiry I found out it was but 3. "Well, Friday," says I, "do not be frightened." So I heartened him up as well as I could. However, I saw the poor fellow was most terribly scared, for nothing ran in his head but that they were come to look for him, and would cut him in pieces and eat him. And the poor fellow trembled so that I scarce knew what to do with him. I comforted him as well as I could, and told him I was in as much danger as he, and that they would eat me as well as him. "But," says I, "Friday, we must resolve to fight them. Can you fight, Friday?" "Me shoot," says he, "but there come many great number." "No matter for that," said I again. "Our guns will frighten them that we do not kill." So I asked him whether, if I resolved to defend him, he would defend me and stand by me, and do just as I bid. He said, "Me die when you bid die, master." So I went and fetched a good dram of rum and gave him, for I had been so good a husband of my rum that I had a great deal left. When he drank it, I made him take the 2 fowling pieces, which we always carried, and load them with large swan shot, as big as small pistol bullets. Then I took 4 muskets, and loaded them with 2 slugs and 5 small bullets each. And my 2 pistols I loaded with a brace of bullets each. I hung my great sword, as usual, naked by my side, and gave Friday his hatchet. When I had thus prepared myself, I took my perspective glasses and went up to the side of the hill to see what I could discover. And I found quickly by my glass that there were 21 savages, 3 prisoners, and 3 canoes, and that their whole business seemed to be the triumphant banquet upon these 3 human bodies. A barbarous feast indeed, but nothing more than, as I had observed, was usual with them. I observed also that they were landed not where they had done when Friday made his escape, but nearer to my creek, where the shore was low, and where the thick wood came close almost down to the sea. This, with the abhorrence of the inhuman errand these wretches came about, filled me with such indignation that I came down again to Friday and told him I was resolved to go down to them and kill them all, and asked him if he would stand by me. He was now gotten over his fright, and his spirit began a little raised with the dram I had given him. He was very cheerful, and told me, as before, he would die when I bid die. In this fit of fury, I took first and divided the arms, which I had charged as before between us. I gave Friday 1 pistol to stick in his girdle, and 3 guns upon his shoulder, and I took 1 pistol and the other 3 myself, and in this posture we marched out. I took a small bottle of rum in my pocket, and gave Friday a large bag with more powder and bullet, and as to orders, I charged him to keep close behind me, and not to stir or shoot or do anything till I bid him, and in the meantime not to speak a word. In this posture I fetched a compass to my right hand of near a mile as well as I could get over the creek, as to get into the wood, so that I might come within shot of them before I should be discovered, which I had seen by my glass it was easy to do. While I was making this march, my former thoughts returning, I began to abate my resolution. I do not mean that I entertained any fear of their numbers, for as they were naked, unarmed wretches, 'tis certain I was superior to them, nay, though I had been alone. But it occurred to my thoughts what call, what occasion, much less what necessity I was in to go and dip my hands in blood, to attack people who had neither done or intended me any wrong, who as to me were innocent, and whose barbarous customs were their own disaster, being in them a token indeed of God's having left them, with the other nations of that part of the world, to such stupidity and such inhuman courses, but did not call me to take upon me to be a judge of their actions, much less an executioner of his justice, that whenever he thought fit, he would take the cause into his own hand, and by national vengeance punish them as a people for national crimes. But that in the meantime it was none of my business. That it was true, Friday might justify it because he was a declared enemy and in a state of war with those very particular people, and it was lawful for him to attack them. But I could not say the same with respect to me. These things were so warmly pressed upon my thoughts all of the way as I went, that I resolved I would only go and place myself near them, that I might observe their barbarous feast, and that I would act then as God should direct, but that unless something offered that was more a call to me than yet I knew of, I would not meddle with them. With this resolution I entered the wood, and with all possible wariness and silence, Friday following close at my heels, I marched till I came to the skirt of the wood, on the side which was next to them. Only that one corner of the wood lay between me and them. Here I called softly to Friday, and showing him a great tree, which was just at the corner of the wood, I bade him to go to the tree and bring me word if he could see there plainly what they were doing. He did so and came immediately back to me, and told me they might be plainly viewed there, that they were all about their fire, eating the flesh of one of their prisoners, and that another lay bound upon the sand a little from them, which he said they would kill next, and which fired all the very soul within me. He told me it was not one of their nation, but one of the bearded men whom he had told me of, that came to their country in the boat. I was filled with horror at the very naming of the white bearded man, and going to the tree I saw plainly by my glass a white man who lay upon the beach of the sea, with his hands and feet tied with flags or things like rushes, and that he was an European and had clothes on. There was another little tree, and a little thicket beyond it, about 50 yards nearer to them than the place where I was, which by going a little way about I saw I might come at undiscovered, and that when I should be within a half a shot of them, so I withheld my passion, though I was indeed enraged to the highest degree. And going back about 20 paces, I got behind some bushes, which held all the way till I came to the other tree. And then I came to a little rising ground, which gave me a full view of them, at the distance of about 80 yards. And we'll continue with chapter 25 in the next video. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys. As Tigger says, ta-ta for now.